Welcome back, listeners. I'm Robin Black. This is It's All About Healing podcast. In today's episode, we have Juliette Karaman with us. She's going to talk to us today about how she has mentored thousands of women over the past decade. And she's going to tell us how she does that and what she does for a living. Juliette, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem at all. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I am a mother of four young adults. They're in their early 20s, and for the longest time, I was a stay-at-home mom. And then two of my kids highly dyslexic, so I really got into like the psychology of it all and trying to help them. And then, of course, time moved on. I couldn't quite help them, but I helped a lot of other kids, became a Senko, helped kids in special needs. And then time went on and I became a coach. And it was through some massive trauma, through some big, intense experiences in my life that I actually learned how to help others. And often when we're on this path, that's what happens. You kind of have to hit rock bottom before you realize it's like, whoa, what am I here on this earth to do? Right?
Absolutely, absolutely. A
So
lot
yeah.
of our abilities are born through our adversities.
That's it, right? There's this path to ascension. It's kind of like smack us on the head, and then it's like, wake up. It's like it's time to wake up. So that's what happened to me. I divorced my husband, I'm very good friends with. I'm actually staying in his house in Lebanon now with him and my son. Um, After 10 years of divorce, right? We've stayed best friends. So that's one of actually the things that I teach women as well, that you can really be in this scrumptious relationship with yourself and with your exes and with your kids, and really have that be beautiful and aligned. And it doesn't have to be daggers and fighting and sticks and stuff,
Right.
but really have the best intention for each other. Um, but when I got divorced from him, I went into the same pattern of overgiving. Hello, hands up. Please raise your hands, anyone that knows they're overgiving, because honestly, a lot of us are, right?
Right.
And what happened is I got together with a man with three daughters. So between the two of us, we had seven children, seven
Mhm.
different holidays, seven different schools, seven different, we managed to get a house together with eight bedrooms, and everyone had their own setup. And it was just like running an army. And my body kind of decided to give up on me. So I spent 9 months in and out of hospital, fainting, not knowing what was wrong with me. So that was my wake up call. That was
Mhm.
my call. It's like, oh, okay, you got to take care of you.
Right.
So fast forward, I became a director of a conscious sexuality program company in the UK, and we brought our first coaching program to the UK. I went deep into sensuality and sexuality because I had experienced so much trauma there. So I knew there would be so much help for others. So I helped a lot of women through that. Then I became, I trained in lots of different modalities. I became a hypnotherapist, started my own thing. But also for 3 years, I mentored and coached people in Accelerated Evolution Academy, which uses a lot of different metaphysical processes to actually get you to release trauma and intense experiences. That, coupled together with my somatic experiencing background, kind of helped people move through it.
Mhm.
And a lot of body shame, and I lost half my body weight. So there's just been so much that not only we women, but often we mothers go through. And we often think that we're the only ones. We're the
Mhm.
only ones that are not understood. We're the only ones that overgive. We're the only ones that feel that we're not good enough, that people look at us in a certain way, or that we're too overgiving, we're too much, we're too loud. And it's always the two extremes, right?
Yeah.
And then when you can get let go of the charge of the charged emotions, because honestly, it's our emotions that are holding us back. It's how we feel about the traumatic experience, the intense experiences, the way someone looked at us. It's how we feel about it.
Mhm.
That is what's holding us back. So
Right.
that coupled together with like a lot of subconscious programming and then hypnotherapy kind of helped a lot of my coaches, and I coach a lot of therapists as well, move through that and then have a better capacity to hold their clients. That's me in a
Nice.
nutshell. There's
Yeah.
much more, but
Nice. So tell us a little bit about the hypnotherapy. I know that you said that it's rapid release. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
yeah. So most of the programming that we have, we are not even aware of it, right? 90% of the stuff that our brain actually does, we're not aware of. We don't know how we breathe. We don't know how the oxygen goes to our heart and how the blood pumps through us because we're not conscious of it. So that's all subconscious stuff that's going on. Then there's also the subconscious, the thoughts that we have and the emotions and how that links us. So hypnotherapy helped me get people to a place of trance. And trance, often people think like, oh, you're a hypnotherapist, you're on straight stage, you're going to tell someone to act like a chicken. I'm like, not quite. I mean, if
Okay.
you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. I can never make you do anything. And I'm
Hmm.
going to actually say this again. No one can ever make you do anything. This is
Hmm.
my little pet peeve where people say, oh, you make me feel so bad. It's like, you can have me feel bad, but you can't make anyone do anything or feel anything, right?
Hmm.
So hypnotherapy, it's if you are open to going in trance, and every day we are in trance. When you drive from, say, from your house to work or to where your kid's school is, you don't actually think about which road you're going to take because you know it. It's automatic. That's a
Hmm.
state of trance. When we go get out of bed, brush our teeth, get our cup of coffee, that's kind of a state of trance because we don't really consciously think about it. So
Right.
what hypnotherapy does, it allows our brain waves to just lower down a little bit. We get into different brain waves, we get into theta brain waves, which are when the thinking kind of stops, and that's when the healing, and that's when you can bring suggestions, which are the suggestions always from the client, because you ask, it's like, what is holding you back? What would you rather be? If I think about, I have had a lot of success with people with addicts, with addictions.
Hmm.
So one of the women that I worked with a few months ago, massive smoker, smoked a lot of weed, drank a little bit too much, smoked a lot of cigarettes. Within one session,
Hmm.
we focus on her health and we focus on that she is a non-smoker. She doesn't do any drugs anymore. She doesn't drink anymore. And her relationship to herself and what she wanted is her relationship to God. She wanted to be able to feel that relationship to God again.
Hmm.
Within within one session, she hasn't touched alcohol, drugs, smoke, nothing. It's now 5 months later. She still hasn't done it. But that's the funny thing. You just need to get to this place, or you don't need to anything, but you can get to this place where it's like, oh, relaxing. And then I just repeat back the the suggestions that you wanted. So it kind of starts with, like any coaching would be, is like, what's happening, what's holding you back, where would you like to be, what's your goal? You take notes on that. You take them
Hmm.
into a state of massive relaxation, and then you say those things back to them.
Wow. And how long are these sessions typically?
My sessions don't last all that long usually.
Mhm.
I started out doing this and doing another method. And I started out with sessions of 90 minutes, and then I went to 75, and then I went
Mhm.
to 60. And now they're usually around 45 to 50 minutes. But a
Wow.
lot of my clients don't actually need that one-to-one time every week anymore. So I've started doing some tune-ins, which I call
Uh-huh.
tune-ins, 15-minute, 20 minute tune in to both their energy, because I'm also a theta healer and I heal people, and actually just clear them. And it's like, okay, and what else do you need? And oftentimes, when people get to that level, they don't need that much talk anymore. They know what it is. It's like they can pinpoint. It's like, hey, I need help with this. And it's like two, three things.
Mhm.
15, 20 minutes later, and they're like, okay, I'm done. I'll talk to you next week, or I'll talk to you at the end of the month. And that's really
Wow.
beautiful that you don't need that Like when you go to therapists, oftentimes it's like, okay, I'll see you next week.
Yeah.
And although with coaching, I started this way that I would have people for 6 weeks or so, I'd have them for 5 or 6 sessions. And
Hmm.
then some people I had for a year. Now it kind of gets it, they get results quicker, really rapid. And then it's like, you know, all the stuff. It's like,
Right.
if you want to coach with me weekly, that's fine, but you don't need it. And I have started cutting the ties where people aren't as codependent anymore and saying, hey, listen, why don't we check in for 15 minutes in 2 weeks?
Right. That makes sense. So, in our majority, are all of your clients women, or are there still co-ed or?
I mean, I do a lot of sexual education as well. I've been trained as an erotic blueprint coach, as an orgasm meditation teacher, as a tantra teacher. I was a professional dominatrix, so that is kind of my jam.
Oh, okay.
But there's that is where I started, and then so much spirituality and so much sexual trauma came up. So I coach a lot of couples on how to have better relationship. And
Okay.
it's not just the better relationship between the two of them, but it
Hmm.
starts with having the better relationship with yourself.
Absolutely.
Oh,
I get that.
so yeah,
And then,
so I coach actually lately. What's been coming up? A lot of men that want to have a better relationship to themselves, that want to hold their woman more
mhm.
strongly. They have very powerful wives or partners, and they're like, "Man, I feel like I'm doing everything wrong. How do I do this?" Right?
That,
Because we can be powerful women.
yes. Absolutely. I get that. So, with the traumatic experiences, so is it the hypnosis that helps them get unstuck, or is it a mixture of everything? What is your expertise in that?
So I have a hell of a lot of tools, right?
Hmm.
I call it Juliette's Jewels. Instead of my toolbox, I've now renamed it Juliette's Jewels. It's just much more
Uh-huh.
fun.
Hmm.
I've done NLP and CBT and EFT and I tap and I this and I that. So
Uh-huh.
I really kind of personalize it to each client. What I've
Hmm.
done now with my rapid release, rewire, and restore method is consolidate all of that into one method, which is very straightforward and gets people to a very altered state, a state of oneness, a state of no charge anymore. There's nothing bad nor good. And then it's like, oh, we're in this oneness, we're in this no state, no mind, no body, we're in this expanded universe where we realize there is actually no difference between us and someone else. And then when
Hmm.
you go back and you look at all the problems that you've had, it's like, oh, there's no emotional charge anymore. I don't feel emotionally charged. I'm okay with it. That was my story, but I don't have to let it define me.
Right. Right. I understand that. That's really amazing. Wow. And you said that you've been doing this for decades, correct?
Yeah, a bit longer probably. It's going on to 15 years, I would say. But
Wow.
it's interesting, the more that I started discovering myself, and I started this for myself, right? To kind of like,
Hmm.
okay, I want to understand more about myself. And then I remembered that I had a massive traumatic experience. I got date raped by 5 guys, and I had completely buried this when I was 18. So all of a sudden, I was getting flogged in a BDSM class, and my body just viscerally remembered, and all these images kept popping up, and I was like, "Whoa!" So I then understood that to duplicate something is how you can move through it. So I contacted someone in London, said, Dom, I said, okay, I need you to reenact this, but let's give it a different ending. And that's how I got into the whole BDSM scene, because that's how you can get to a lot of ecstatic states as well.
Yeah.
And re-remembering that, and then also noticing, well, yeah, because people always say, well, none of it is my part. It's like,
Hmm.
why did this happen to me?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you kind of look at it, and then you start looking at it from all the angles. And most of the people that I've worked with now, I mean, actually, I would say, yeah, maybe one or two people now, but pretty much 99% say, oh my God, I would never change my life. I've worked with
Mhm.
clients that have lost their children to suicide, that have been suicidal themselves, that have had massive trauma, that have had people, have had sacrificed their babies in cults. I mean, it's been some pretty intense stuff, and
Mhm.
they're all at a state now. It's like, oh, if I didn't go through it, then I wouldn't be able to teach and help others
Right.
with it. And
Exactly.
that's what it is, right? I know you know this. It's we all have a story like this. And so
Absolutely.
you
And
think like, why is it?
how did that affect you mentally back then versus now? Like, were you extremely traumatized back then, or?
You know what? I think I was 18, and I remember it so well. And I've actually since then gotten in contact with the woman that was with me when this both happened to both of us.
Mhm.
Um, and we kind of just dealt with it. It's like, okay, so there's always some guilt. It's like, what did I do to entice this?
Mhm.
Did I dress too provocatively? Did I, what was it? And it's like,
Mhm.
whatever it was. Um, I kind of dealt with life. I had my kids. I got married. I dealt with life. I completely buried it. My psyche wasn't ready
Mhm.
to deal with it.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
then when it was like, oh, okay, me too. And then you hear all the stories of everyone else. And
Mhm.
it was incredible because that's where the whole me too, the whole empathy started, right? Where it's like,
Right.
oh my God, this happened to me and me too, instead of like the whole sexual sexual
Right.
trauma me too bit. And knowing that you are not the only one,
Mhm.
that that because oftentimes in sexual trauma people will feel like they're tainted,
Mhm.
or they have done something wrong, or they've done something to call this upon them, and then they can't be intimate with their partner, or they don't know how to ask for certain things. So just taking away all those layers by layer, it really helped me be with my clients and really have them look at it. It's like, hey, is that actually your thought? Or
Right.
is that something that society told you? Is that your mother's? Is that your father's? Is that your sister's? Is that
Right.
what you picked up from your abuser? What is it really yours? Let's look at it.
Wow. And do you know why typically when we suffer through trauma, why is it that we immediately blame ourselves?
That is such a good question. It's I think if you're really honest, when we were born as babies, we're perfect, right? We
Mhm.
have no ego. There's the ego, the it hasn't come in yet. And we're just like, we're smiling, we're laughing, we're pooping, we're crying, we want to be fed. It's like a baby doesn't think, oh my God, should I ask them for something? Or can I cry or not? But
Yeah.
it's funny, right? But it's as of the age of 2, everything really, I mean, first until 2, everything loads in anyway. But then from 2 to 6, that's when we start having personalities, and really when things start loading in even more, and you start noticing what your parents do around you, and how someone might have looked at you. I mean, I
Right.
remember I was like a really bright teenager, no, little kid, and
Mhm.
loud, and I would give everyone my presents, and I remember one person looking at me saying, "Oh my God, you're so loud." So it's like, "Oh,
Uh-huh.
okay, I've got to dim down a bit. I can't be this loud. I can't be this bright." And this
Mhm.
is what I see especially with women, where it's like, "Hey, you don't need to dim your light
Right.
just because others around you are not that bright. You don't have to dim your light."
Yeah.
And we as women like to catastrophize stuff,
Mhm.
right? That's
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like, I mean, I've got 4 kids, and I remember being in these meetings with my friends, and they're like, "Oh my God, you never imagine what my daughter did. She did whatever,
Uh-huh.
tore up the coffee machine, and there was like coffee everywhere, and splatters on the new paint, blah blah blah." Second
Yeah.
woman said, "Oh my God, my son, he cut his wrists, and there's blood splurting everywhere." We tried
Mhm.
to outdo each other that way, and the third one said, "Well, my son burned down the garage, whatever." Where men will kind of like outdo each other, saying, "Hey, I've got this cool." cool Porsche. Look at me. I got this cool whatever
Yeah.
G-Wagon or whatever. And we women try to outdo each other that way. And then when you actually saying, hey, I'm really sorry that you've all had such shit days, but I've had an incredible time with my ex-husband and my son, they kind of
Mhm.
look at you like,
Yeah.
that's not very conciliatory. And it's like, well, actually, yes, it is, because just because you're having a shit day, I don't have to dim myself
Right.
down to you. And
Right.
then once you start doing that and people start noticing, it's like, oh, you can actually be bright, have a good day, still empathize with people,
Mhm.
but you don't have to dim yourself down.
Absolutely. And it seems like a lot with the women, it's like, you want to be there for each other and empower each other, but it seems like they're always in competition with each other. They're always out for blood. And it's just like, why do you think that is?
It's funny, right? That's my way that I found woman for the longest time.
Mhm.
And I think the more that you spend time in conscious relationships with women that actually want to awaken a little bit, right?
Right.
And want to bring more consciousness to their own life, to their relationship to their children, then they realize there is no competition.
Right.
Just because woman X has more than woman B doesn't mean that woman X is taking away from B. And I
Right.
remember when I got divorced, I had some girlfriends that wouldn't invite me over to dinner anymore. And at one point, they'd have me over for lunch, or we'd go for lunch or coffee. And at one point, I just, I'm Dutch, so we say what it's like. So I just said, "Hey, Nikki, what's going on here? Why aren't you inviting me for dinner anymore since I got divorced?" It's like, "Yeah, you're a single woman now." I'm like, "I'm not really single anymore." But it's like, "Well, what's going on there?" She's like, "Well, you know what? I'm kind of scared that my husband will find you interesting." And I was like, "Wow."
What?
And you would think that I would, I would let advances like this happen, but this is often the case where we're so insecure in sisterhood because it hasn't been modeled to us. Do
Right.
you know any older woman that model beautiful sisterhood to you?
Yeah.
Have you grown up with it? I mean, most of us haven't.
No.
Most of us have grown up with some toxic
Right.
womanhood.
Absolutely. I
And
agree
it's
with that.
only until you come into groups, and this is why I love doing group work, and this is why I love doing women's groups, circles, and retreats. You spend 4, 5, 6 days together in womanhood. There's no men around you, and you can get so deep. And if you think about how we evolved, we used to be in red tents. We
Hmm.
used to we used to like massage each other and talk to each other. We used to learn from our elders.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Lebanon now, and these Arab women used to cook together and roll their vine leaves together, and it's not difficult, but it's some of the food preparation is long and
Hmm.
arduous. So they'd all be in the kitchen and they'd be chatting and they'd be learning about periods and men and this and that.
Yeah.
But there was a real sisterhood in that,
Yeah.
and I feel that the competition has really started when women started working more and started having to compete with men and with other women.
Right. And I never understood it. It never really made sense to me, but that makes sense because we internalize so much, then we project onto others. And I don't know, maybe there's an inferiority complex, but I used to always wonder that. That drove me nuts.
Crazy, right? And for
Yeah.
the longest time, I had boyfriends early. It's like, oh, these women, they're crazy, It's like, oh my god, like everyone's on their period, and it's like,
Yeah.
and then I'm like, I'm a woman too. Okay, let's have a look at me. What do I need to change in me to
Mhm.
not feel about others this way? Because that's what it is. What we see in someone else, we have, right?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
The
And
glimmers are in the triggers.
yeah, I like that. The glimmers are in the triggers. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So, and what's the best way for anyone to get a hold of you?
I think best way is probably my website. I have a website called my brand's called Feel Fully You.
Hmm.
Because I was like, okay, fine,
Yeah.
you gotta feel your emotions, you gotta feel your body sensations. So feelfullyu.com. I've got a whole bunch of free meditations, journals, things on there, and that's how you can see how you can get into a whole bunch of courses with me. I do some VIP days and retreats, but a lot of group coaching as well. And then I am on Instagram, Juliette Karaman. So that's Juliette's French spelling, double T E, Karaman, Karaman, and same on Facebook. And I think I'm even on LinkedIn, but I don't use LinkedIn much. I'll be honest.
And is there anything else that you want to add to the for the listeners?
I would really say when you see something in someone else that you don't like, be curious instead of judging it. Kind of like what I always say, my quote that I've kind of like coined is awareness is the first step towards self-love. So really when you start becoming aware if someone is triggering you, whatever behavior they have is like you can't stand it, then
Uh-huh.
just kind of look at it. It's like, okay, so what's the thought I'm having? Because any experience you can break down into four elements: a thought, an image, a body sensation, and an emotion. And if you can duplicate all of those, so it's like, okay, what's the thought I'm having? Is there an image that goes with it? What's happening in my body? What am I feeling? Is there contraction, expansion? What's the temperature like? Really be
Hmm.
curious. And then what am I feeling? What emotion am I feeling? And if you allow yourself to feel that, put a timer on for 2 times 90 seconds a day.
Hmm.
The mind chatter stops, the monkey mind stops a little bit, and you can get to that place. It's like, oh, that wasn't a big deal. Like, okay,
But
so
what
she's a bit
about
annoyed.
if they can't put an image with it? What if it's something that's just unknown that you're not sure of yet, and then that kind of leads to false reality, then doesn't it?
You don't always have to have an image, but if you can find at least three of those elements, you can always find the thought,
Hmm.
right? It's like, okay, so there's this, I don't know, hate the way she talks. I'm like, okay, let's think. All right, so go ahead and think that thought. I hate the way she talks. It's like, great,
Hmm.
okay. So, what's happening in what emotion does that bring up? Because it will probably trigger something from childhood or from earlier on. It's
Hmm.
like, oh, the emotion is like really annoyance. It's like, so go
Hmm.
ahead, feel that annoyance. Where's that annoyance showing up in your body? It's like it's a contraction in my throat, the back of my saliva glands is feels metallic. It's ugh. Like,
Hmm.
okay, feel that. And when
Wow.
you're feeling all of that, what's the next thought? It's like, oh, okay, the annoyance is lifted, but now I'm kind of like, she's just, why does she need to be in my space? It's like, okay. So think that thought. Why does she need to be in this space? Do you see an image of like, yeah, I see her in my space. Okay, okay.
Hmm.
I'm gonna watch that image. It's like now when I think that thought, why does she need to be in my space? I see her in my space. What's happening emotionally? I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit annoyed, but
Yeah.
kind of like me, whatever. Like, okay, where does that annoyance show up? It's like, oh, got tingly fingers. It's like, all right,
Yeah.
so feeling all of that. What's the next thought? Is there a next thought? It's like, oh, this is kind of silly. All right, think that thought. That's kind of silly. Any emotions that come up, it's like, yeah, kind of bland. But you see how quick it is that you go from a really negative thing that you just go to kind of like neutral. And you can just get to neutralness so quickly.
But that just seems so interesting. Like, how can they pinpoint where they're feeling it? Like, how do you get them to do that? Because I don't know if I could do that. I mean, I'm not in that moment, so I don't know, but that seems very interesting.
It's where you just hold a really tight container, but it's also, I
Hmm.
think, where we teach people sensations. We're not used to describing what we're feeling in our body. Because
Hmm.
I'll ask you, hey, are you doing? You're like, yeah, I'm good, I'm fine. It's like, oh, I'm happy. I'm like,
Right.
and I'll ask you, what does happy feel like in your body? And you'll be like,
Right.
all right, most people are like, I don't know, I feel happy. It's like, but if I then ask, it's like, okay, so for me, happy means I feel tingling through my body. There's a bit of warmth going
Mhm,
through it. My face feels like it's breaking out into a smile. I feel this buzzing.
mhm.
Then you can feel in your body what that feels like.
Right.
All
Okay.
right. So oftentimes we can just share what's going on. We don't even have to put an emotion to it. We can just say,
Right.
if I'll be saying to you, like you'll ask me, Robin, you say, Juliet, how are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm feeling good. I've got this tingling in my fingers. My chest feels really expansive. My hands are a little bit sweaty. So I think I'm probably a bit nervous. But,
Uh,
I feel overall, I feel really excited to be here. Then you and
right.
your body can feel what it feels like, right?
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Because I was like, how do you know? Like, how
That's
would
it.
you know?
I teach them about that a little bit.
Interesting. I'm actually going to be going to your website myself because that seems very interesting. And I really would love to know a lot more. So thank you
Yeah.
again.
So this is actually a course that I have. It's called Feel, and it's a really basic course, but it basically teaches you what is happening in your body. What are the sensations that you have? What are the thoughts? This is what it leads you through for, I think, 3 weeks. And people
Mhm.
are like, "Whoa! I didn't realize that this was going on in my psyche and in my body."
And it's a course called Feel.
Feel, yeah, it's on my website. I have some evergreen courses that you just kind of like go through on your own pace.
Oh, nice. And then how often do you do the retreats?
The retreats, I was just talking to my ex-husband and my son that I actually want to take some people to Lebanon. It's a
Hmm.
beautiful country, and whoever is attracted to this will come, right? I'm
Right.
thinking retreats, Lebanon. I think end of the year I'll do one in Tulum, and possibly one. There's one in London end of September,
Hmm.
and one of the English countryside, and then I'll probably do one in Marrakesh. I have a bit of a connection to the Arab world, although I'm blonde and blue-eyed. So I'm trying to do 3 to 4 times a year, longer retreats, and then one day VIPs and 1 day retreats are a bit more often.
The 1 day retreats. And then how long are your other treats typically? Sorry, I'm asking so many questions.
That's okay. No, go for it. My retreats usually are around five days because I kind of feel
Okay.
people need a day to to fly in from wherever you are and fly out, and then 5 days there you need a day to land. I also take people through mushroom journeys. I've done a lot of shamanic stuff. I
Hmm.
helped my sister pass over, my father pass over, my mother pass over. So there's a lot of shamanism that I do that I don't always advertise because people think it's a little bit too woo.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, they get a bit of a taste of that as well. And then it is oftentimes it's the group that really helps
Hmm.
women face their body issues,
Hmm.
really become in touch with who they are, and oftentimes it's what is my impact? What do I want to leave
Right.
this world with?
Hmm.
Yeah, when I'm on my deathbed, what am I gonna tell my grandchildren? What's my last dying, like words of wisdom to them?
Hmm.
And if you can dial it back to that, then you have your little path, you have your journey, and then we can just make the next steps towards that, right?
Yeah. And what
And
would your last words be?
my last words are always have more fun and really love as full out as you can. Be generous, receive love, give love, and be in that frequency.
Yeah, I like
It's
that. I like that a lot.
it's crazy. We're so fear based. We're so much like, oh my god, there's not enough money, or I don't know how to do this, or that. What
Mhm.
are people going to think of me? And if you just slow the fuck down
Yeah.
and actually just be in that space of oneness and realizing that there is no difference between me, Juliet, and you, Robin, and
Mhm.
Timbuktu, and whoever is
Right.
listening to us. There is
Right.
no difference between us. We are all energy in motion. And
Mhm.
all we can do is touch someone's lives a little bit, make that a little bit more bearable. And then that is the ripple effect that kind of like helps the whole consciousness ascend.
Yes, I like that. I'm so interested. There's just like, I had so many more questions. You are very intriguing. So I will definitely be going to your website myself. And please tell the listeners again what your website is and how to get a hold of you.
My website is called feelfullyu.com. And there are a lot of things on there. There are a lot of courses on there. At the moment, I have a massive savings scrumptious. It was my birthday. It was my 55th birthday. And I've been doing this incredible deal. Like, I think it's 55% off everything at the moment. Um, and find me on Instagram, on Facebook, Juliette Karaman. And honestly, set a timer twice a day for 60 seconds or 90 seconds and just check in with yourself. What's going on?
Hmm.
What are you feeling? Take a breath. Where is that breath landing in your body? Does it feel expansive? Does it feel contracted? You don't have to change anything, but just become aware of it. And that is the little breadcrumbs. Start looking at the little breadcrumbs. They're always there.
All right. Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure speaking with you today.
It's been so much fun. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And that's all for us. Everyone, stay blessed.